My name is Ella and I'm 20 years old. This story, the one I can't stop replaying in my mind, took place just this past summer. It's a story about a line. A line I had sworn to myself to the world that I would never ever cross. It was a line drawn in the stone of family morality and everything I thought I knew about myself. But then, on a warm, humid night in the quiet of my childhood home, he stepped over it. Or maybe I was the one who erased it completely. This is not an easy story to tell. It's a story that lives in the shadows, in the hushed, secret spaces of the heart, but I'm going to tell it, every last detail, because I need to know if I'm the only one who has ever stood on that precipice. Before we dive into this complicated truth, I want to ask you to do a few things for us. Don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments below, I'll be reading them, and subscribe to our channel to keep up with all of our latest stories. Your support means the world. It all started with a secret. The idea of surprising my parents, of just showing up on their doorstep after a long, grueling year away at college in California, was too delicious to resist. The thought of their shocked faces, the warm embraces, it was the perfect antidote to the loneliness and pressure that had become my constant companions. Dragging my heavy suitcase along the familiar cracked sidewalks of my small Midwestern hometown, I couldn't help but smile. The air was thick with the scent of cut grass and impending rain, the soundtrack of my entire childhood. But when I finally swung open the front door, my heart bubbling with anticipation, expecting to be crushed in hugs and bombarded with questions, I was met with an unsettling, profound silence. The house was empty. They weren't home. Just as the first wave of disappointment began to settle in my gut, a familiar voice pierced through the still air, calling my name with a mixture of shock and delight. Ella. It was Max, my younger brother, who had just turned 18. He emerged from the kitchen, and for a second my brain couldn't quite process what I was seeing. The boy I had left behind 10 months ago was gone. In his place stood a young man. He was taller than me now, his shoulders broader, the lanky awkwardness of his teenage years replaced by a new easy confidence. His wide, familiar grin, though, was the same, and it lit up the entire space. "Max," I said, dropping my bags to the ground with a loud thud as we met in a tight, heartfelt embrace. It was effortless, a simple, happy exchange between siblings, but something lingered in the back of my mind, a quiet, startling recognition of how much more mature he seemed now. The boy was gone. The man was here. Once Max left to go meet up with friends. I closed the door behind him and let out a deep, heavy sigh. The stillness of the house settled in around me again. But this time it came with a sense of profound peace. I had finally returned to the one place on earth where I felt I truly belonged. After the long, exhausting journey navigating crowded buses and chaotic train stations, I was desperate to shed the grime and fatigue that clung to me like a second skin. The first thing I did was head straight for the upstairs shower. The hot water was a balm, hitting my skin, and washing away not just the dirt of travel, but what felt like the accumulated stress of the entire semester. As the tension of looming deadlines, frantic study sessions, and the relentless pace of college life finally melted away, I felt a wave of pure, unadulterated relaxation sweep over me. I let my shoulders relax, finally releasing a breath I didn't even know I'd been holding for months. Afterward, wrapped in a fluffy towel, I padded barefoot to my old room, gently pushing the door open. The familiar scent of my space, a mix of old books, vanilla-scented candles, and me wrapped around me like a warm hug. It was a time capsule. My band poster still clung to the walls. My bed was neatly arranged, adorned with my favorite patterned sheets. It felt like stepping into a different version of myself. A younger, more carefree version, one that was untangled from the anxieties of the past few months. But even as I slipped into a comfortable light summer dress and sank onto my bed, there was another thought tugging at the corners of my mind. The relentless demands of school and my part-time job had left little to no room for a personal life. The easy, casual closeness I once took for granted had been missing for some time now. Sure, there had been moments here and there, fleeting encounters at parties, awkward coffee dates that went nowhere, but none of it had turned into something real, something meaningful. The quiet of my dorm room, with its paper-thin walls and nosy roommates, hadn't offered many opportunities to truly unwind, to connect with someone, or even just with myself. So as I lay back against the soft pillows, I couldn't help but wonder what if anything I had missed while I had been so wrapped up in the whirlwind of my academic life. The thought lingered in my mind, a quiet, persistent ache. It transcended the mere necessity of companionship. It was a journey toward rediscovering my own essence, my own desires. I picked up my phone, my thumb mindlessly scrolling through the endless numbing feed of other people's perfect lives. Yet, it wasn't long before my thoughts drifted to more distant, more intimate realms. I let the phone fall to the side. Reclining against the pillows, I allowed my fingers to lightly brush against my own skin. It was a primal urge driven by the need to rediscover a bond, to feel something real. Rather than anything else, my fingers glided across my arms, tracing the curve of my collarbone, brushing against the gentle, soft fabric of my dress. I exhaled a shaky, unsteady breath, allowing myself to truly feel, to reconnect, to unwind after all the stress I had been striving to overcome. It was in the middle of this quiet, solitary rediscovery that the sound of a soft knock on my door broke through the hazy stillness of my thoughts. My heart leaped into my throat. I nearly cast my phone aside in a panicked rush. Ella, Max's voice, muffled, came from the other side. I quickly adjusted myself, smoothing my dress, trying to compose my features into a mask of casual nonchalance as I called out for him to come in. Max paused at the threshold, the door creaking softly as he finally crossed it, stepping into the unknown territory of my room. It was immediately evident that something weighed heavily on his thoughts. His usual lightness, that easy grin, was gone. He stood there awkwardly for a moment before finally sitting on the very edge of my bed, running a hand through his thick dark hair. I sensed that whatever it was, it carried a significant weight. Max sat in silence for what felt like a long time, initially fidgeting restlessly, as if he were searching for the right words, the right moment to begin. I remained quiet, giving him the space he needed. At last, he started to speak, initially with a deep hesitation, but then in a sudden cathartic rush he shared with me the story of his girlfriend. From what I'd heard in our infrequent phone calls, I thought they were happy together. One of those idyllic, young, carefree high school sweetheart relationships. Yet beneath the surface, all was not as flawless as it appeared. Their battles, he confessed, were relentless, sparked by both trivial matters and significant issues alike. He sensed that no matter what actions he took, they would never suffice for her. She would become distressed over matters he was completely oblivious to. And the ensuing disputes left him utterly exhausted. He admitted that he still had feelings for her, yet he was uncertain if he could continue down this path. The relationship, he said, his voice cracking slightly, was beginning to weigh heavily on him, to crush his spirit. As he spoke, I observed the profound transformation he had undergone since I'd last seen him. He had truly transformed from the boy I once playfully mocked into a young man. He possessed a newfound quiet maturity, a profound depth that had eluded my perception until now. His shoulders had taken on a broader, more solid stance, while his face had emerged with sharper, more defined angles. He bore himself with a newfound confidence, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that had accompanied my departure for college. I absorbed his words, my attention divided between the pain in his voice and the fresh, startling understanding dawning upon me regarding him. He possessed an undeniable magnetic allure, a quality that rendered it difficult to avert one's gaze. He continued to speak, revealing more of himself, more of his vulnerability, than he ever had before. He admitted that the thought of ending their relationship had crossed his mind multiple times. Yet he was uncertain if he possessed the strength to follow through. I yearned to offer him solace, to utter the perfect comforting words that might lift his spirits, yet in that moment it felt as though words would fall short. They felt hollow, inadequate. So I followed the path that seemed most instinctive to me. I moved closer and gave him a reassuring hug, offering the simple, uncomplicated comfort I knew he needed. It was not merely a hug born of sisterly courtesy or routine. It was real. It was a way of saying without words that I understood, that I was there for him, that I saw his pain. As we sat there on the edge of my bed, my arms wrapped around his trembling shoulders, something shifted in the air between us. I don't know if it was the way he relaxed into my embrace, his body molding against mine, or the sheer warmth of his presence, but suddenly I was hyper-aware of him, of the way his soft hair brushed against my cheek, of the faint, clean scent of his cologne, of the way his breathing slowed and deepened as he calmed down, syncing with my own. The hug lingered for a beat too long. It changed from comforting to something else, something charged. I hesitated for a moment. Then softly, almost inaudibly, I asked, "Is this okay?" My hand moved from his back to his face. His skin was soft under my fingers, and I found myself tracing the strong line of his jaw. Then down to his neck. It was meant to be an innocent, soothing gesture, but it felt electric. His body seemed to melt further beneath my touch, leaning into it just a fraction of an inch more. My thoughts were a whirlwind, caught in a desperate struggle between my current actions and the path I knew I ought to pursue. Uncertainty lingered within me, a question echoing in the depths of my mind. Why did I persist? Why was I refusing to retreat? Perhaps it was the manner in which he anchored my spirit in that moment. Perhaps it was merely the surge of feelings of a long-dormant desire for connection that accompanied the moment. No matter what it was, I found myself unable to halt my actions. It was as if the choice had slipped from my grasp, leaving me with no recollection of the moment I had committed to this dangerous path. Yet there came a moment, a distinct, terrifying and thrilling moment, when I grasped his hand, guiding it gently from my shoulder to rest upon my leg. It was a spontaneous, impulsive decision. A decision made in the fleeting, breathless moment before doubt could take hold. In that instant, I sensed him stiffen, his muscles go rigid beneath my touch, unmistakably taken by surprise. Yet his hand found its resting place exactly where I had positioned it, high on my thigh. His hesitation was palpable. Yet beneath it I could feel a spark of curiosity, of a question he didn't dare to ask. His hand radiated a scorching warmth through the thin fabric of my dress. His touch was hesitant initially, as if he were caught in a delicate balance between the primal urge to advance and the conditioned instinct to remain motionless. Then gently his fingers started to move, guiding themselves in delicate exploratory circles along my thigh, ascending with each tender, terrifying sweep. My heart raced within my chest, and I sensed the warmth surging from that single point of contact throughout my entire body. Every nerve I possessed tingled with a heightened awareness, reacting to his touch in a manner I hadn't experienced in ages. We lingered in that moment, time stretching endlessly around us. His hand glided softly, discovering as I nestled against him, my face tucked into the curve of his neck. My body seemed to have a mind of its own, shifting and arching under his touch, reacting to every movement he made. And then, just as the moment felt like it couldn't possibly get any more intense, the sound of the front door opening downstairs shattered the quiet intimacy of the room. I jumped back so fast it was like I'd been burned, pulling away from him and yanking down the hem of my dress in record time. My heart was still racing, but now it was from pure, unadulterated panic. Max looked just as flustered as I felt. His face flushed a deep red as he quickly scooted back to his side of the bed, putting a universe of distance between us. I barely had time to catch my breath before my parents called out, their voices carrying through the house. "Ella, is that really you?" They sounded excited, worried, and relieved all at once. I forced myself to get up, my legs feeling shaky and unreliable, and went to greet them, my mind still spinning from what had just happened in my room. They hugged me tight, asking a million questions about why I hadn't warned them I was coming. I mumbled something about wanting to surprise them, trying my best to act as normal as possible, to slip back into the role of the dutiful, loving daughter. But even as we sat down for dinner later, laughing and catching up, my mind kept drifting back to that moment. I couldn't stop thinking about the way Max's touch had felt, the way my body had so eagerly responded. Was he thinking about it too? The rest of that evening passed in a blur. I went through the motions, talking, laughing, unpacking, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. My thoughts kept circling back to what had happened with Max. The memory of it was seared into my brain. The warmth of his hand, the way my body had reacted with a will of its own, the palpable electricity in the air between us. It was all so fresh, so vivid, that I couldn't shake it no matter how hard I tried. Even after I went to bed that night, sleep wouldn't come. I tossed and turned, my thoughts running wild, replaying everything over and over again. The way he had gazed at me just before we separated, the gentle, hesitant caress of his hand, the overwhelming sensation of being so near to him. What thoughts occupied his mind? Did it rattle him as deeply as it did me? The following day proved to be even more challenging. The house which had once been my sanctuary now felt like a minefield of unspoken tension. Encountering Max throughout the day, brushing past him in the hallway, sitting across from him at the breakfast table was excruciating. It wasn't precisely uncomfortable yet. It held an air of distinctiveness, of a shared secret that vibrated between us. We were both acutely conscious of the events that had transpired, yet we found ourselves at a complete loss for how to address it, uncertain of how to navigate our interactions in this new, dangerous reality. I found myself stealing furtive glances at him, observing the subtle details that had previously escaped my notice, the new tension in his jawline as he delved into contemplation, the gentle cascade of his dark hair across his forehead, the fluid, confident way he moved. Each time our paths intertwined, my heart raced just a bit faster, and I couldn't help but analyze every moment we shared. Did he perceive the way I gazed at him? Did he sense the same forbidden allure that captivated me? Or was he just trying to forget it, to move on as if nothing had happened? I tried to distract myself, but nothing seemed to work. My parents were busy with their own things for most of the day, leaving me with far too much time to think. I kept reliving the moment in my room, my mind a tortuous playground of what-ifs. What if the door hadn't opened when it did? What if we hadn't stopped? The questions were endless, and they only made me more restless, more consumed by a feeling I couldn't name. That evening, my dad came into the living room where I was sitting, scrolling aimlessly on my phone. He apologized, saying he and my mom had to go out for the night to take care of some errands for a friend. He felt bad about leaving me alone, especially since I'd just gotten back, but I waved it off, telling him it was fine, that I had plenty to do. As soon as they left, the house felt eerily quiet. It was just me and Max again, and the silence seemed to amplify every little noise, every creak of the floorboards, every beat of my own heart. I tried to focus on something, anything else, reading, watching TV, but my thoughts kept drifting. The stillness only made it worse, giving my mind free rein to wander back to the way his hand had felt on my leg, the way I'd felt when we were that close. I don't know when the idea first formed in my head, a tiny, insidious seed, but once it was there, it was impossible to ignore. I tried to talk myself out of it, tried to reason with myself, to scream at myself internally about how wrong, how insane it was, but the pull was too strong. The memory of yesterday was too fresh, too vivid, and the burning curiosity of what could happen if I didn't stop myself this time. It was too tempting. It was late, well past midnight by the time I finally made up my mind. The house was dark and quiet. I could hear the faint, steady sound of Max's breathing through the thin walls. My heart raced as I approached his room, my bare feet gliding quietly over the cool hardwood floor. As I pushed his door ajar, my gaze fell upon him. He was sprawled on his side, his back turned toward me. He looked peaceful, his breathing slow and steady in the soft glow of the nightlight. For a moment, I just stood there, my hand on the doorknob, watching him, trying to decide if I was really going to go through with this. But then I found myself moving again, my feet carrying me to his bed before I could talk myself out of it for good. I slid in beside him, careful not to wake him at first. The mattress creaked softly beneath me, and the gentle heat of his presence enveloped me, a comforting, dangerous reminder of our closeness. Initially, I simply reclined there, attuned to the rhythm of his breath, sensing the gentle rise and fall of his chest. Yet as time stretched on, I found my own breath growing increasingly rapid. I found myself compelled to extend my hand, my fingertips brushing against his arm gently, as if to gauge the atmosphere between us. It wasn't long before he stirred, his breathing changing as he started to wake. He turned onto his back, his eyes fluttering open in bewilderment as he recognized my presence beside him. I could see the surprise in his expression, the way his eyes widened as he took in the situation. I denied him the opportunity to voice his inquiries or objections. I took his hand, just as I had the previous day, and led it to my leg. He paused, briefly, his muscles tightening beneath my fingers, but then he relaxed, a silent surrender, letting me lead. The ensuing moments unfolded in a hazy, dreamlike state. My senses were honed in on everything around me, the warmth of his hand, the way his fingers moved tentatively at first, then with more confidence as he got comfortable. My heart raced, my skin tingled, and I felt completely, utterly lost in the moment. There was a vulnerability to it, a raw, unspoken honesty that made everything feel so real. It wasn't perfect or polished, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the connection, the way we seemed to understand each other without words. The way our bodies moved together in this unspoken, forbidden rhythm. Without even thinking, I shifted toward him, closing the space between us in what felt like slow motion. My hand instinctively reached for his shoulder, and before he had the chance to react, I leaned in and kissed him. A moment of connection passed between us, heavy with unspoken emotions, and then I pulled back, unsure of what to say next. The kiss was not marked by uncertainty or doubt. Rather, it was audacious, brimming with all the intensity that had been simmering between us. I nudged him softly yet decisively, my hands resting on his shoulders as I guided him onto his back until he reclined beneath me. I sensed the subtle change in his body as he settled into the mattress, his hands naturally seeking out my waist. I positioned myself atop him, straddling his hips. The sensation of being there, elevated above him with every inch of our body so intimately close, was nearly overwhelming. The kiss deepened, evolving into a slower, more intentional embrace. I sensed his hands grip my waist a bit more firmly, a silent indication of his effort to steady himself, as if the weight of the moment was almost too much for him to bear. My hands moved up to his face, framing it, my thumbs brushing against the light scruff on his jawline. I tilted my head, adjusting the angle of our kiss, and his lips parted slightly. That small motion sent a shiver down my spine, and I leaned into him more, letting my body press against his. I was fully taking over, setting the pace, controlling the rhythm, and it felt so intoxicating to let myself have that power. His hands began to wander, gliding up my back and then down to my thighs, but there was no urgency or aggression in his touch. It felt as though he was allowing me to take the lead, placing his complete trust in me, which only intensified my desire for him. Perched above him, I felt an undeniable sense of belonging, as if this moment was precisely where fate intended me to be. Yet just as the temperature in the room began to rise, just as our shared fantasy was about to become a full-blown reality, reality crashed down upon us with the force of a brick wall. As I bent closer and pressed my lips to his, once more, my thoughts surged forward. This was the moment. My body thrummed with a longing so intense it was painful. I was acutely aware of his presence, of his body reacting to my every move. I took a brief pause, my voice low yet intentional, and I inquired, "Do you have anything?" The expression on his face was truly remarkable. Initially, there was a swirl of confusion, as if he struggled to grasp my meaning. Then it gave way to a gradual awakening of understanding. Then he gave me a sheepish, almost childlike smile, his cheeks turning the faintest shade of red. No, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't think. I couldn't believe it. 18 years old, had a girlfriend. And no condoms in his room. I just stared at him for a second, a mixture of disbelief and pure exasperation washing over me. Come on, I said, a frustrated laugh escaping my lips. How do you not have anything? He tried to defend himself, muttering something about how he didn't expect this to happen tonight, which possessed a charm that was utterly maddeningly exasperating. Really, Max? I remarked, my head falling against his chest for a moment as I tried to figure out what to do next. The thing was, I didn't want to stop. I couldn't stop. I wanted him far too much. And so I decided to shift gears. If he wasn't ready in that way, fine. I'd make sure he still remembered this night for the rest of his life. I slid down a little, my body trailing against his as I moved from his hips to his thighs. The way his breath hitched as I adjusted myself gave me a fresh spark of confidence. As I nestled between his legs, I gazed up at him, my fingers lightly grazing his knees. Before gliding up the contours of his thighs, his whole body tightened, his breath hitched once more. And I sensed his struggle to maintain composure, but his body was revealing the truth of his turmoil. His fingers entwined with the bedsheets, his thighs tensed subtly beneath my touch, his chest heaved and subsided with a rhythm both profound and erratic. I couldn't help but smile as I kissed him again, lower this time, feeling the tension in his body build with every move I made. His body was so incredibly responsive, and I loved it. I loved knowing that I could do this to him, that I could pull these reactions out of him just by being close, just by touching him in the right way. As I continued, I could feel him relax more and more, his body melting into the mattress as he released the tension that had gripped him. At one moment, he released a low, nearly imperceptible groan, and it coursed a wave of heat directly through me. I took a moment to gaze at him once more. His head was tilted back, lips gently parted. Eyes shut as he completely surrendered to the experience. He appeared striking, utterly exposed and unraveling. It only made me want to keep going. When it was over, I felt this strange, hollow mix of emotions. The adrenaline had worn off, but the electric buzz in my chest was still there. I slowly stood up from the bed, the full weight of the situation finally sinking in. A fragment of my being remained ensnared in the overwhelming intensity of it all, in the vividness of life that had surged through me. But as I stood there in the stillness of his room, uncertainty began to creep in. I stole a look at him, still sprawled out on the bed, his chest gently rising and falling as he regained his breath. He looked serene, satisfied. I cleared my throat, trying to shake off the tension. So I said, trying to sound casual, even though my mind was a chaotic storm, "You're not a virgin, right?" He opened his eyes at the question, looking up at me with a mix of confusion and curiosity. Then he nodded with an unwavering certainty. "No," he said quietly. I arched an eyebrow, scrutinizing him intently. A small, strange wave of disbelief washed over me. For some reason, I found myself at a loss for words. I had built up this narrative in my story where I was the initiator, the experienced one guiding him through a new world. But this new twist, this simple fact, it complicated everything. With a deliberate turn, I exited the room, my pace measured as I sought to collect my scattered thoughts. I pressed my back against the cool wall of the hallway, shutting my eyes tightly as I tried to navigate the surge of tension coursing through me. The guilt was eating at me, a nauseating sensation taking root in my gut. But the rest of me, the parts of me that had been dormant for so long, felt exhilaratingly alive. I couldn't deny that a part of me, a big part, wanted to feel that again. As I stood there, I realized I needed some perspective. I needed to talk it through, to ask myself if what I'd done was okay. Was it really wrong? Should I feel this profound remorse? Or was this feeling of being alive worth the transgression? At last, I made my way back to my own room, my heart pounding, grappling with a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Yet one certainty lingered in my mind. Tonight would remain etched in my memory, regardless of my choices or the emotions that ultimately surfaced. It was destined to remain with me forever. In that moment, I found myself pondering the question, is this truly the right course of action? I was truly eager to find out. Surely I couldn't be the only one who had ever experienced this feeling. Could I? I posed the question to the darkness, yearning for a glimmer of understanding from anyone who might possibly offer insight.